I was telling someone last night how phenomenally difficult it was for me to come out and interact with the world as a standard issue East Coast, Connecticut American white boy who used to fight in a cage and drink and lift weights and be on the right side of that masculine spectrum to sit in an airport and go, I can feel every single person in here and it's overwhelming. I need to go hide in the bathroom. And so I've been out of the dark for about 4 hours and I'm on the phone with Chase saying, and I remember Doug, the woman asking, so how was your day? And I was like, sweetheart, you have no fucking clue. Like, if I even begin to answer this question, you will think I'm a psychopath. So I'm like, it's fine.
Welcome to the podcast that guides men to demystify and develop their intuition. I'm your host, Doug Beitz. Let's dig into the science and expand your horizons. My guest today, Traver Boehm, is an author, TEDx speaker, men's coach, and the founder of the uncivilized men's movement. He's helped men all over the world to wake up to their power of their hearts, the brilliance of their bodies, and the wisdom of their souls, so they can blaze their own path by uniquely blending both the primal and the divine within them. Most recently, Traver completed an extraordinary 49-day dark retreat and released his latest book, which describes his first such journey, 28 Days in Darkness. He is dedicated to doing his part to help end the suffering in men, the suffering caused by men, by guiding them through their own journey into an actualized version of masculinity. Traver, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me, sir. It's a pleasure.
Yeah. So at the end of your bio there, it talked about helping men, guiding them on a journey into their own actualized version of masculinity. I'd like to
Mm.
start right there if you'd like to share on that one.
hmm I think that people often peg me, Doug, as having these two words as my most important, the primal and the divine. And I would say the most important two words that I have in my personal arsenal and my teaching arsenal and men's work are the words yes and. And yeah, I stole it from improv. First time I heard it, I went, wait a minute, wait a minute. This ties right back into what I've been talking about for years when it comes to men, that there's this spectrum of behavior and spectrum of thought and spectrum of expression, let's call it, that is available to all men. And in my own branding, the civilized world makes that spectrum very narrow and makes you or asks you to choose a particular set of narrow parameters. You can be hyper masculine, which I dub the 1950s Marlboro Man for Americans, like the lone cowboy out on the prairie, hat down, doesn't need anybody, no emotion, no feeling, all drive, all performance, no relationship, etc. And then the other side is the sensitive new age guy or the nice guy who is solely driven by emotion, who has no backbone, who's scared of his own power, who's scared of his own strength, who's scared in essence of his own masculinity or to be a man. And I view society as saying, pick one or the other, brother. Which one would you like here? And when I first started putting this all together 8 or 9 years ago, I didn't want to choose either. I wanted a little of one and a little of the other, and knew that there were times when I wanted to be all the way on the far right, and there were times when I wanted to be all the way on the far left. And I wanted the choice and the availability of the entire spectrum. And so now when I work with men, I take the right side and say it's primal. It's powerful, it's strong, it's bodied, it's natural. It's what I take you, put you out in the woods and go, cool, you're going to live here for the next 3 days. You got to figure some shit out. You're going to tap into that side of yourself. Now you're holding your firstborn child in the hospital there with your partner. You need to have some emotional intelligence here. You need to have some connection, right? Some contact, as my teacher calls it. The ability to stay attuned, the ability to feel, the ability to be in relationship. I dubbed that the divine side, for lack of a better term at the time. Now, after working with thousands and thousands of men since that time, when I say actualized masculinity is a man who can look at the entire spectrum and say, I've worked through all the parts of myself that would block me or shame me from expressing myself anywhere on the spectrum. For the guys who are more 1950s Marlboro oriented, for them to go, I can't cry. That's weak. I can't feel emotion. That's weak. What am I, a girl? What am I, a woman? What am I, the feminine? Right? And have to work through whatever he's been taught that wasn't his so that he can have a fully actualized human experience. Just like I would take the guys on the left, on the sensitive new age or nice guy side, and say, it's okay to build something powerful in the world. It's okay to walk with your shoulders back, your head high, to be physically strong, to want things, to have sexual desire, to be more traditionally masculine. It's okay. What I want you to have is choice. That's the key word in all of this, where most of us don't get the choice until some point in our lives where we've hit an element of rock bottom, a divorce, a breakup, a job loss, an identity shift, a disease, someone dying, something major that makes I'm old enough, some of your listeners may not remember this, but a record scratching makes a very particular sound. And there's a natural interrupt where we suddenly stop being on the default track that we've been on and we step off of it long enough to look around and say, wait a minute here. I'm not sure this works for me anymore. I'm not sure this worked for me ever. But now I have enough accumulated evidence of the divorce, the job loss, the health issue, the whatever it may be, to say, I'm not living the life that I want to live or that I can live. And that's when men enter my world and we teach them, here's the spectrum. You see this? You see all the options that are available to you. And here are your blocks. Here's the things that you believe to be true that I don't believe to be true. So I don't have to walk around in the world living by the same set of rules that you do. I can go deadlift 200 kilos and then 5 minutes later be crying and think that's a great day, either or anything in between. I don't have a set standard that says I have to pick one or the other. Now, a lot of this work also with actualizing men and actualizing masculinity is something that I was never brought up with, which was looking back at my life and saying, what were the major pain points? What were the big things that I just went, well, I'm a guy, I have to get over that? What are the traumas, little t or big T? And am I willing to work with a professional or sit with them myself until I actually do alchemize them? And they're not dictating the course of my decisions. My trauma isn't making my choices for me. Every man needs to do that at some point in his life or multiple points in his life. And usually, Doug, I find this around 35 to 45, life kind of comes in and goes, oh, if you haven't done it yet, here you go. Here's your inciting incident. Here's your car accident. Here's your DUI. Here's your bankruptcy. Here's your wife cheating on you. Here's your child getting sick. Here's your father dying, your mother dying. Now, here's the great word for you. It's called initiation. You're about to enter a process that's bigger than you, that's going to require you to grow into a man who you currently are not. And when men take that journey and take that brave step, what happens to them is parts of them that were closed begin to open. And they begin to feel the world and navigate the world with different senses or new senses or heightened senses. And their experience of being a man radically changes. What was once important to them may not be important at all. The path that they were on may seem ludicrous and they want to deviate and change paths. Like we both, I'm sure, know dozens, if not hundreds of men who were set on a course, something happened and they went, wait a minute, I don't even want to be a lawyer. But every male in my family for 5 generations has been an attorney. I want to be a surf instructor in Costa Rica. I want to be a writer. I want to be a doc. I want to be something. Or I haven't loved expressing myself this way. I want to feel a part of my being that I haven't had access to. I think I'll leave it at that since I've been talking for a bit. But I would love for any man listening to this who hasn't engaged in the depth work of men's work to recognize. I think the easiest analogy, Doug, is like if you've only eaten sushi your entire life and you think that's food, and then someday your buddy takes you to an Italian restaurant, and you're like, what on earth is this stuff? What is this pasta? This is lasagna. What is this? Isn't food. It's not sushi. And then you realize, oh, wow, there's whole worlds out there. And what I would love for men to really hear is, oh, wow, there's whole worlds in here, inside of themselves, feelings, places they can access, parts of themselves that they have available to them for both knowledge, wisdom, and in your wording, intuition, and just feeling life in a much different way. That to me is the real juice rather than a guy saying, oh my God, I used to just eat sushi. Now I eat lasagna. When I have men who say, if you asked me 6 months ago, what could I quote feel? It was angry, horny, and I need to work out. And now I feel grief, I feel joy, I feel satisfaction, I feel frustration, I feel this whole rainbow gamut of emotions. And they've added so much color and flavor to my life as a man. I can't imagine my life now without them.
Yeah.
So I'll pause there.
Yeah. No, I hear you. And I'm curious, you and I are extremely different people. And
Mm,
I think that's what has attracted me to you and and listening to you on many podcasts, etc. And I'm curious here because I they say your mess is your message. And I've heard you enough, so you've had a few messes in your life and they've
mm,
become this message you are preaching right now. And preaching's a wild word. It's not a drug. I'm not saying that in a derogatory way at all. But I'm just curious here. I've I got married at 20, which you think, oh boy. At 16, I had my first date, my first kiss.
mm.
And at 62, I'm still with that girl.
Wow.
And she toddled off to work, half an hour ago, and I kissed her goodbye, and off she's going. She'll be back in 4 or 5 hours. And we're so in love, it's not funny. We have four amazing sons, and it's almost like if you believe in multiple lives, reincarnation, which I do, but I don't expect anyone else to, that my last half a dozen lives must have been so nasty, so bad
Mm,
that I've just been given an easy ride this time.
mm,
Yet I've also had courage to do things.
mhm,
At In my late 20s, I had been a professional firefighter for 10 years and I resigned from that job,
mm,
packed up my family and moved to a little island and built a scuba resort. Did that for years, near the equator in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. And I followed things. And then when it was time to sell that sort of 8 odd years ago, crazy synchronicities happened that I had the courage to follow.
mm,
And that went really, really well. I could have gone really
mm,
bad too, but it went really well. So I haven't been divorced. I haven't, and
mm,
what my dad lived till he was 92. He passed away 3 years ago. And that relationship was challenging. Was messy. And that's part of the reason why, because he lived a life of quiet desperation. But
mm,
and I hear you and I know so many guys who've been divorced. Like it's just, and I almost feel embarrassed because I've never gone through that. Like my own siblings, of most of them, I've got four
mm,
siblings. Most of them have gone through divorce. So I've been next to it, watched it, um, and I believe we have to go through things to grow. And you're a testament to that. And it's like you're phenomenal testament to that. You're in the top 1% of that. You've had the shit happen and you've pulled through it and you've moved beyond it and you've taken men with you. Like you lifted them up with you as you've rose out of the ashes, which to me is phenomenal. But then sometimes I look at myself, and this is what I'm going to ask for you. I look at myself and I think,
sure.
have I blown it? Because I've had
Mm,
what I consider an easy life. The the things I've found hard in my life is I felt I've never fitted in. I've never
mm,
I've never fitted in with. When I was in a firefighter, I enjoyed it, but I just never felt like I was one of the boys because it was a boys' club when I was there. After I left 20 years ago, the female fighters started coming on, but it was just literally a boys' club. Um, so, what's your thoughts on that? Like, I don't know if I've even got a question in there, but just I I got my little movement here trying to help men go
Mhm.
along, and yeah, it could be a lot better than it is. But um, what are your thoughts on that? Do you think you've got to go down before you come up?
Most of the time, but not all of the time. And you spoke to what I would name, Doug, as more of a systemic existential pain or angst rather than an acute situational angst. I fit in everywhere. I've had a great, was one of the boys, was on teams, was a fighter, had quote popularity, was a college athlete. Uh, did I fit in everywhere? I had some different thoughts, but I didn't have a systemic pain. When my life fell apart, it really hit me of, oh wow, these things can actually happen to me too, because it had felt rather charmed up until that point. Now, I will tell men, most of you have to hit rock bottom, but not all of you do. And now, even through further study, through the dark retreats, what I'll say is everybody's path is completely different, right? And there's some people who would have, quote, a charmed life of riches and wealth and ease and fame and etc. And they hate it. They can't stand it. They will kill themselves in the midst of it. All they do is beg and pray at night for a quote normal life, right? So I
Yeah,
think we each come in with a particular flavor of thing we need to experience in this lifetime. And I am at the point where I don't question my ride and I don't question anybody else's. Of this is your path. There's specific lessons and takeaways and experiences that your soul, if we want to go esoteric here, wants you to experience in this human experience. And you will come back if you believe so and do it again in a very different body, situation, structure, etc. When and if that happens next. So no, I don't think you need to, but I think most men do. I think most do. But I know a number of guys who also have had not have missed the rock bottom bullet, let's call it, and still are deeply devoted to the path, are deeply devoted to change, or deeply devoted to transformation. And that's just a different set of circumstances for them. So no, I wouldn't think you've missed it. I don't think you've blown it. I don't think your your growth edges will be different than mine, right? You're raising four boys. That is a very different life than I have. You've been with the same woman since 16. That is a very different life than I'm experiencing. But I imagine the grass is the same color on both sides. It just smells different.
yeah, 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 and yeah, very. Because as I've been listening to you on other podcasts, I've sort of had these thoughts and these questions, questioning myself, and then thinking,
Mm.
because sometimes I think, and this is very not said in a judgmental way, but sometimes I think we go through pain and stuff unnecessarily because we
Mm.
don't follow our intuition. Now, I don't think it's
Mhm.
always that. I think sometimes we just decided before we were incarnated here that I need to experience these things for whatever reason.
Mhm.
Like I looked, like 35 years ago, I heard the term most men lead lives of quiet
Mhm.
desperation. And
Mhm.
instantly I just pictured my dad. It was like,
Mhm.
that is my dad. And it was
Mhm.
only like at his funeral that his younger brother shared some stories with us. And it was like,
Mhm.
because dad never told us anything. You know, he was just typical blue collar, worked in a rock quarry, and that was a real noisy, like with the rock crushing plants. He'd lost 99% of his hearing. He was from once he was probably 50 on, you know, you couldn't communicate very well with him. And So I just thought, yeah, my dad, when I was young, would go fishing and he would teach me about intuition back then. And
Mm,
because he'd been a fisherman for a long time, like
mhm,
professional fisherman. And I didn't get it when I was 8 and he was talking to me about stuff. I'm like, what are you talking about? But then I sort of had the thought, well, if dad would follow his intuition, because he would come home on a Friday or Saturday night and he'd been to the local bar on the way home, we'd got his pay, and he'd walk in the door and there was never anything physical went on, but it was always emotional. Like it
mm,
was, we would hold our breath and hope that he would walk straight into the bedroom and collapse on the bed and then wake in the morning. And then we would exhale. It was like, thank goodness,
mm,
like,
mhm,
whew, we've dodged that bullet tonight. And I started to think if my dad followed his intuition more and made just one better decision every day, after
mm,
a few months, he would walk with a skip in his step. He would sometimes decide not to go to the bar on the way home to numb things out. And so for me, sometimes I think us men put ourselves through pain that we don't need to go through. Not always, but
mhm,
sometimes and that's I guess that's been the basis for me wanting to raise an awareness with men on learn what your intuition can do for you, how it can
mm,
help you, and how it can help you help other people too, not just yourself. Um, that's I guess the angle I'm coming from. Sometimes if we'll tap into this in it, because I believe there's a invisible benevolent force out there that loves us and is
mm,
constantly, daily, hourly trying to get information to us, whatever way it can,
mm,
to help us, to help ourselves, to help others, just to make things simpler, so that we, and not even to make things simpler, but so that help us understand what's going on out there so we can see a bigger picture. Because, in the last 5 years, there was a lot of bullshit going on the planet. And I'm not going to say which side of the fence I was on, but every time you turned on social media or the news, they conflicted heavily. And it was how it's so hard to work out what's really going on. And I still don't think we've been told what any side of it, no matter which side of the fence you were on. So for me, my intuition has helped me
mm.
see a side of it and that's, I guess, where I'm coming when at with things that sometimes we can dodge some bullets
Mm.
and get the message at the same time. Get the benefit that the bullet would have caused. Might have taken us 6 months to work through that because we might have got through it in a week and
Yeah.
still come out of it with a depth of understanding of like, oh, okay, I get it. Yeah, I don't know if that makes sense to you.
Think about your situation, Doug, of what you learned at a deep level from your father's behavior. Because how many men have that same experience, and then their children say, and now we hold our breath when dad comes home and hope that he goes straight to the bedroom and passes out until the next morning. And that man himself promised himself 50 ways to Sunday, I will never be my father. But yet he is. And yet you went the other way. So
Mm,
I will also say, you talked about perhaps not having the rock bottom or the initiatory devastation experience, but you lived it every Friday, Saturday night, probably.
yeah.
So it was there, brother. It just may not have been in the form of a divorce or a sick child, but it was like metered out over time. And think of how that initiated you into having a relationship with your intuition rather than you now being, a guy who just is headstrong and like cut off from the neck down because you viscerally got to feel and literally got to see this man is two decisions away from a great life. And yet here he is walking back in numb, angry, shut down, etc. and has a family that's suffering because of it. You said in my intro to lessen the suffering in men so that we end the suffering caused by men. A big part of my teaching is to get men to listen to their bodies and listen to their gut. There is a whisper, there is a voice. I heard it clearly myself, and that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. And it could have gone the other way. I'll tell you, when my life fell apart around 40, the advice I got, so I'd let go of a business. I was a gym owner and was married. And number of people in the next 3 weeks after that became public said, go 2 towns over, start a new gym, go out on a couple dates, and in 6 months you're right back where you're back on your feet, bro. Like you're back. Go get it. And I remember like literally putting my hand on my stomach and saying, that's not what's being asked of me right now. I will be back here again 3 years after that in the same situation because that is truly not the path that I'm supposed to be on. Now, did I have language for that and a deep understanding of that and all of these examples of that and a framework for that? Not a bit. Just like you didn't probably when it was, hey, I can't be a fireman anymore. I'm going to go do something out of the ordinary and open up a dive center. That's a hand on the stomach decision, right? That's not like, oh, I bet there's a great 401k or, this is job security and, you know, yeah,
Yeah. And
yeah, yeah.
when you mentioned there about, something you said there about like I decided not to follow my dad's path. Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely. When I was 5, I can remember watching my dad smoke because he, smoked his whole, when he was 12, he started smoking
Mm,
and until he was 91, went into the nursing home and they wouldn't let him smoke anymore. But at 5, I was like, I will never smoke. Like,
mm,
and I had this little saying, are you a man or are you a mouse? And I used to think
mm,
my dad was a mouse because he didn't have the guts to stop smoking. And I was
mhm,
so judgmental of him. Like back then, it was like I feel bad now of being so judgmental of him. But 5 or 6 weeks after he passed, I did a very full-on guided meditation by a lady called Anita Morjani, who'd had a profound near-death experience. And during that meditation, she guides you in a way that I've never had a guided meditation guide you before, like really full on. And anyway, my dad came to me in that meditation and he said, son, you and I agreed before you were born that I would be the best example for you because you came here on a mission and you
mm,
had to learn some serious stuff. And we agreed that I would do the opposite of everything you needed to do. And that's
mm,
the example I was going to set for you. And like Dad's top 1%, he did a top job of
mhm,
teaching me what not to do and how not to be. And I saw my dad so differently after that meditation, like 5 or 6 weeks after he passed. It was like, wow, thank you, Dad. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Like, yeah. And, if you talk to my siblings, they all would tell you that I was the favorite and I got everything they didn't. Yeah. And because I was actually born quite a few years after them, very unplanned. And I physically have the body of my dad, like at his funeral and that there was people come along that I'd never met who, from Dad's part, whatever, and they looked at me like big eyes and went, whoa, like,
yeah.
oh, like, because I was now the age that they were hanging around Dad many years ago, like, and they're like, geez, So I am my dad. There's mornings I throw my legs out of bed, put them on the floor, and I feel like my father as I'm getting out of the
Mhm,
bed,
mhm,
but with a very different mindset. So,
mhm,
yeah. I have written so many questions here to ask you, depending on how it flows and what we're going. I'm just going to pull a couple out here. I want to go into the darkness. And for those who don't know, Trevor will tell us about he 10 odd years ago, he spent 28 days in the darkness, and then 6-ish months ago, 49 days. So he's going to tell us that story. And as you start to tell us, I've got a few questions that I want to get
mhm,
into, but some basic stuff like you're in the dark, complete dark for 7 weeks.
Mhm.
Your circadian rhythms, did you take in things like vitamin D3 supplements, or, like we get from sunlight? Like how did you handle that stuff? How
Yeah.
did all that work?
I did take in some supplementation. I was told, given a list of things, vitamin D, vitamin C, vitamin E, some general B vitamins, just because of the length of time. Um, I can't recall the protocol off the top of my head, but I had 49, the 7-day pill bottle
Hmm.
that sometimes older people have, and you pop a top. And so I had 7 of those with me, pre-filled before I went in.
Andy, very good. And what about your circadian rhythms, like with, light and dark and that sort of stuff? And I know I've heard you say like you had a rough idea of what time of day it was by the birds singing, like sort of dawn and
Hmm.
your meal times and things like that. But when you came out back into the light, did it take long to get back into the cycle of light and dark again?
No, it only took about 3 days. And the cycle I was on in the dark was that I would, and I'm presuming primarily here, that I would wake up around 3:30. And for people asking, like, how the hell did you know that? Because I'd be awake for what felt like 3 hours or 2.5 hours, and then I would hear birds chirping. And they would come chirp very loudly for 5 minutes, and then they'd stop. And my assumption was they chirped at sunlight, at the first break of sun. And I asked the woman who was guiding me, what time is daybreak here? And she'd say, oh, sometime between 5 and 5:30. And so I would wake up around that time, and if all went well, I would be pretty vibrantly awake. I would meditate, I would work out, I would do some thinking, meditate again, wait for breakfast, eat breakfast at 10, and that was set. That I knew 10 a.m. was roughly when I was eating, and then would often take a nap, would often fall back asleep again, and then wake up, have a couple hours to myself to again meditate, think, do whatever I was doing that day, and then eat again at 4. And then here's what was really interesting, Doug, is a lot of times I would be ready to fall right back asleep after dinner or within a half an hour after dinner. And I didn't want to get into I wanted to keep that rhythm or have some kind of rhythm, period. And so I would have to keep myself awake. Sometimes for 2 hours at a time, I'd lie on the floor with my feet up in the air. I would put myself in uncomfortable situations physically, or I had to. I'd meditate again. I'd sit on the hard stairs that were in the room. So I was physically uncomfortable. And then most days would probably go back to sleep around 9 o'clock at night. And
Wow.
that was the rhythm. Now, every once in a while, something went haywire, and I would sleep all the way till breakfast and be like, holy crap, it's 10 a.m. I'm dead asleep when they come. Or would eat breakfast and would sleep all the way till dinner, which is, 6 hours later, eat and then be up awake for much longer. But that was sort of the rhythm that I settled into.
Mhm. And so I'm going to give you a question there about being in the dark. For me, with intuition, as we start to develop it, start to tap into it, it's like a frequency that, we're tuned, as you said before, you're old enough to know about albums, and I'm quite a bit older than you. But remember maybe your first car, your radio, where you could turn the dial, and we got
Mhm.
static, and then we got the station, and we locked in on the station. So there's different frequencies, like into modern day, we've got our phones on 4G, 5G, maybe 6G shortly. And so, but they're unseen. So I'm wondering, in the darkness, did anything happen with your intuition? Did it get better? Did it get worse? Did it change? Was there anything obvious, or there was just no, you didn't notice anything? I'm curious.
I don't know if I would classify it as strictly intuition. I would classify it as having a relationship with the deepest parts of myself. I can use the word soul or just depth. where I could ask myself a question. I could ask the room a question and say, I'm meditating and I'm grinding on this one thought and I can't get that thought out of my head. And I would say, there has to be something underneath this. Would you mind showing me what that is? And then in an instant, I would have a flash of a picture or a 3 second video clip in my mind. And that would answer a question that would then send me into a whole nother process. So I don't know if I could say intuition in the way that I use it now, where I'm sitting across from a client and they say something to me and I go, hmm, I would love for you to answer that in a deeper way because I'm not saying I don't believe you, but the answer didn't land. And then they start crying and then they tell me the truth. So now I think there's a far more practical application. I was telling someone last night how phenomenally difficult it was for me to come out and interact with the world as a standard issue East Coast Connecticut American white boy who used to fight in a cage and drink and lift weights and be on the right side of that masculine spectrum to sit in an airport and go, I can feel every single person in here and it's overwhelming. I need to go hide in the bathroom. Right? Or I need to put headphones on and pull a hat down. I used to be a bodyguard. I used to scan humans with my eyes for a living. Who's out of order? Who's not, you know? And here I am being like, I think I need to go suck my thumb. I am not okay right now. There are 9 people in the room with me, and that's way too many. And it's now calm. It's found a middle ground where I can kind of turn it on and turn it off or ask it for permission to use, which even this conversation is not uncomfortable, but the analytical part of my brain that was raised by an attorney and an engineer is saying, this is new, but it feels more real than all of the analysis that I've done in my life with my thinking apparatus, which has gotten me to write 3 books and built, a 7-figure business and been quite successful. But now this whole part of my stomach, that's how I described it to you. Like my stomach came alive. And it was alive, Doug, at other times in my life. But then work got heavy and I was drinking a lot and I was doing other things to numb it. And it kind of turned itself off. And so in the room itself, I'm not sure I wouldn't have reflection of it other than I had a clear channel all the way down the middle of myself where I could access depth, ask depth questions, get answers from things, from situations that were pre-verbal, right? From when I was a baby, I could see that from those eyes. I could experience life at that time. And so I'm not sure if I can qualify that as intuition or just access to something else.
Well, it fits perfectly because for me, because intuition is a gazillion different things. And as I said earlier, I see there are invisible benevolent forces who love us, trying to get information to us. So for me, when you're sitting in there for 49 days in the dark on your own, they're like, oh, we got this. Hey, guys, come over here. Oh, we got a live one here. He's fully
Mm-hmm.
tapped in. He's got nothing else to, distract him. Like, whoa, we're getting some messages in here. So to me, there was plenty of stuff flowing. There was invisible benevolent forces
Mm-hmm.
feeding you with what you needed, downloads with whatever it was, in whatever way, and they possibly had ways to get it to you in a different way, simply because of your geography and your mindset, the situation you'd allowed yourself to be in. And it's
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, it's an easy one. Let's pour. We can pour the whole jug in this time. We don't have to use the eyedropper. Now, I've got one that I've not heard you talk about before, and I love analogies to help
Mm-hmm.
me grasp things. I'm assuming you've done the odd ice bath in your time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, a couple of years ago, my wife fractured a spine, and as the months went on, people recommended that she have some ice baths. So she's a bit of a scaredy cat. So she goes, "I'll do it if you come with me." I'm like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
beauty. When we were on this tropical island, we had our water temp all year round was 82 degrees. So we go
Mm.
scuba, like that's just what I was used to. So now I've got to go and do ice baths. So for over a year, probably 3 to 4 days a week. So I haven't done it in the last year or so, but I'm familiar with them. And I'll tell this my interpretation of an ice bath is you don't hop in it because it's fun. No one ever
Mm.
enjoys being in the water for those minute or 4 minutes, whatever you're in there. But when you get out, you do it because when you get out, you feel really good. You feel like you're
Mhm.
glowing, you sleep better, you just
Mm.
feel alive. Everything's great. So it's not while you're in there. So I'm very curious, could you compare that to the darkness? Could you say, yes, when I'm in the darkness, it's not that pleasurable, but I'm doing it because when I get out, the long-term benefit to the rest of my life is going to be phenomenal? Or is that just not, is that a reasonable comparison or not?
It's close. I felt like the time that I was in there was reorganizing me, reorganizing my insides, which can be unpleasant, can be hard, can be difficult and challenging, but isn't acutely painful like an ice bath is. And I've done, 15 minutes in ice water before. I'm okay with pain. This was this is the best way to describe the 49 day, Doug. It was like getting the shit kicked out of me every single day, but there was a lesson after the beating that I would sit there and go, "Holy crap, that is a huge lesson. I needed that desperately. Wow, thank you. So good." Or there were also phenomenally creative times, which I never have in an ice bath. Maybe because they don't last, 7 weeks. But I wrote stories in there. I wrote another book in there. In the 28-day experience in 2016, I wrote my TED talk in there. Uh, I don't know if it's a personal thing to me or if it's just something that's available to anybody who does a longer period dark retreat. I would have files in my brain of pieces that I was writing, and I could open the file, open the paper, continue to write. And I'm talking in my head, just like speaking it out loud, or just speaking it in my consciousness, and then put the paper away, close the file, and it would be right there 4 days later when I went to open it again. And so there were hours and hours and hours where I would lie on my back on the floor and write in my head and laugh and delight in the stories and just have a grand old time. And so there was this equal part. There was that, and there were times when I would literally be racking my body with sobs and just crying uncontrollably and desperate for human touch and affection and someone to come put their hand on my back and tell me it was going to be okay or whatever it was that I was acutely dealing with. So I will also want to speak about coming out. I've been out since July 20th, I think. No, July 7th. And it has been phenomenally difficult to be out. Where I did an ice plunge 5 nights ago, and it was awesome. And exactly as you talked about, we stood up afterwards and we're like, whoa, invigorated, and hell yeah, this is amazing. Where this has been months and months and months of challenge of how do I live in this world that doesn't make sense to me? How do I have human, and I don't want to hierarchicalize myself, but the human experience on some level makes so much sense to me. And yet the flip side of that is it is exponentially more confusing than it's ever been, and I don't understand it at all. And I
Mm.
don't really know where I fit in between that dichotomy. And I would love to tell you that I came out and was like, all right, let's kick ass. I'm enlightened. Let's go fuck some shit up. Let's start another business. Let's write another book. Let's give talks all over the world and share this beautiful message that I have. And mostly I've been sitting in a bedroom going, what do I do now? How do I incorporate this? How do I navigate this? And some pieces have come through that I am teaching and sharing, and I'm doing talks on it. But at my core, to be 100% honest with you, I'm still very confused as to who I'm supposed to be in the world now.
I love that, Trevor, because you're making me feel good. Because, like I said, my whole life I felt like I've never fitted in. So now, anyway, I know you might be
I
helpful
feel
to
you.
you. Um, yeah, no, that's a great answer. Thank you for that. And do you think you or anyone else who goes into the darkness for those lengths of time, not just for 3 or 4 days, but the long one, do you think you'd ever get to 49 days and think, yeah, I might just tell the lady, when she comes in the morning, I'll stay for another week. Do you think, or do you think like it's time to go, or do you think anyone would really enjoy it that much? You'd want to stay. You want to get the shit kicked out of you again, like so that you could have an amazing revelation again tomorrow, or you think, how do you think there?
Okay. Do I did not want to stay another moment longer after 49 days. There's a natural arc that I found that, and I want to share with people that every week a woman would come in and help clean the room and change the sheets and bring me new towels and wipe down the bathroom and also ask a couple questions to see if I'd lost my ever loving mind or not. Right. And I remember the last week, before the last week, or sorry, the 7 days prior to me leaving, she said, by us having this conversation, you're already leaving the room because I'm going to tell you what's going to happen in a week and what the protocol is and where you're going to go in the house when you're done and what food will be there and what you do. And that automatically takes a part of you out of the room. So you'll start to feel some tension as we get closer and closer, as more and more of you starts to psychically or howeverly in, interact with the outside world again. Where on day 15 there was no outside world. It just was so far and so distant of a thought. So I wanted out, and I felt like despite one of my hardest days in there, Doug, absolute like rock bottom, someone come help get me out of here day was day 47. That it had taken that long for me to get to the deepest, gnarliest, worst thing that I had to live through in there. Where I remember thinking even a couple days before, like, oh, I'm probably going to skip this section. I kind of knew what it was, right? Like, oh, maybe this is for the next retreat. If anybody's done plant medicine, you're like, I know what's going to happen. I'm going to tangle with my abuser. And then they just like skip through fields of flowers and they're like, oh, not for this round. But to answer your question, I wanted to come out. And a lot of it was I wanted to interact with life again. I wanted to see people. I wanted to surf. I wanted to go in the ocean. I wanted to read a book. I wanted to engage with life. But I will tell you, 100% transparency, that one of the most difficult pieces of coming out was I spent 7 weeks with my fucking soul, brother. Just me and God. And I'm not a religious person, or like me and the energy of the universe. And then suddenly there was this huge input of competing elements that now I blindfold myself every morning, heavy blindfold, and I meditate for a half an hour. And I get to come back to the room and to the darkness, but I don't live there. I don't own real estate there. I'm not walking through the fields there. I'm now a tourist. And that was really, really, really difficult. Now, I will tell you that that same woman told me, the woman who was guiding me, of someone that they had in who had planned for 90 days. And I think they talked her out of it. She was a young Indian woman who was literally like, I just need to stay in here till I'm enlightened. And however long that takes, I don't care. And she was that devoted to whatever path she was on. And I think they were like, knock, knock, knock. So it's been 90 days. We're gonna pull you out. You need to go eat a meal, get some sunshine, go to the beach, read a book, you know, watch some Netflix. Like there's life out here.
Yeah,
Uh,
wow. So
as
she
a
did the
po
90 days.
I believe she did the 90 days. Yeah.
Wow, that's crazy. And I can just, I've got a 1% I can relate to what you're saying with you, since you've come out of the dark. When we had our dive resort, it was like 350 miles north of the equator in between Guam and Hawaii. Like
Mm.
there was a magazine once said this is the sixth most remote place on Earth. We were in the middle
Wow.
of nowhere.
What was the
This
name of it?
It's
The
called
the island?
Kushrai. It's in the Federated States of Micronesia, near the Marshall
Okay.
Islands out there. And it the speed limit was 25 miles an hour, but people rarely did that. A lot of potholes, people were doing 10, 15 miles an hour. So when we come back to Australia, it's like, whoa, it
Mm.
was the easiest thing to go and live there and slow down. It was so hard. We were so
Mm.
fortunate because of synchronicities and following intuition when we left the place. When we wound it up and moved it on to someone else and we came back, I financially didn't need to work for the next 3.5 years. So
Wow.
in my mid 50s, I
Mm.
just,
Beautiful.
as what did my wife call it? I reinvented myself. Doug's
Mm.
reinventing himself. And I did. I went and did all sorts of classes around the world and different energy things and all sorts of stuff. And um,
Beautiful.
so, yeah, I can relate slightly coming
Mm.
from a very, very slow place life. Their whole motto in life was plenty much time later. Like
Mm.
just,
Mhm.
and one of our waiters, he would always be late for work because there'd be a lot of rain there and overcast. And we said, I'm going to get you a watch. Next time I go off the island, I'm going to go. And he's like, he looked at me with terror. Doug,
Mm.
he's like, please, please don't buy me a watch. I said,
Mm.
why not? He said, I had a watch once and it used to make me rush.
Oh, I
So
love it.
I didn't buy him a watch. So I can relate,
Mm.
like coming back into the speed of life, and you're looking around and
Mhm.
you're going, "What the fuck's going on here?" Like these
Mhm.
people are nuts. Not just how
Yeah.
they drive on the road, but how they act in the supermarket, how they,
Everything.
yeah. And you had it so amplified. I
Mhm.
had a diluted little minor amount of it. Yours would have
Yeah.
been crazy. Um, and
Yeah, I'll tell you, this
there
was
you go.
sort of archetypal. I came out the day I came out. Uh, the couple guiding me was like, Spend a couple days here with us. Don't go on social media. Don't go on the internet. Don't talk to people." And I said, "Well, I need to check in with a couple people to let them know I'm alive." And so I let go, or I connected with my business partner, or sorry, the president of my company and my ex-girlfriend and some other people, and immediately was told, "Hey, there's fraud on the business credit card. We've had all kinds of charges, and you have to call them as soon as you can." And so I've been out of the dark for about 4 hours, and I'm on the phone with Chase saying, and I remember Doug, the woman asking, "So how was your day?" And I was like, "Sweetheart, you have no fucking clue. Like, if I even begin to answer this question, you will think I'm a psychopath." So I'm like, "It's fine. What's going on?" "Oh, there's all these. I have charges in Malta and Tunisia. I did not make those." And that started just challenge after challenge that I then went, "Wait a minute. I thought I was going to come out to this smooth reopening and reintegration. And I felt like I had doors slammed in my face left and right that I didn't have the capacity to deal with." It was like having to navigate stuff when you're too drunk. That's kind of how I like, oh man, now I have to drive. I had issues with my housing. I had issues with a book publisher I had at the time. I still have. I had all of these big league challenges that went, okay, this is real life. Okay, cool. You're not blessed. You're not enlightened. You're not charmed. Guess what? You're gonna get your ass handed to you, and then in your free time, have to learn to process this massive spiritual experience. And that's how it's been.
Yeah, wow. Yeah. Just going to check my
Credit
credit.
card fraud, day
Yeah,
one.
work straight into that.
Welcome back.
Yeah, yeah. Just seeing what other questions I've got here. And I'm just curious, like, there's some guys near us that run a really wonderful rites of passage. They've got a whole big facility on a massive amount of land, and it's mainly geared at teenagers. And I know there's rites of passage at all different stages of our life. But do you think, like, I see that I view your darkness time there as a rite of passage going through. Do you think if men went through a full-on rite of passage like they do in Africa and stuff like that, that we would maybe come things through things better, would need to go into the dark less often, things like that, rather than how we just seem to just wing along in life and go along and don't have respect for these changes of, when boys, when they hit puberty, when we get married, when we become grandparents, well, there's all the different things. Do you
Mhm.
think that would be helpful if there was a formal rite of passage?
I think it would change everything. I cannot speak to how profound the change would be. It would change literally everything.
Mm,
We have lost the sacred, however you want to use that word, and we've removed ceremony, however you want to think of that word, throughout every major stage other than perhaps marriage. And that's just now like an expensive party that's been commercialized. But
mm,
how different would it be? Like that was a rite of passage for me. I felt the call to it in this with this deep discomfort in my stomach a year and a half before doing it. And I remember as I got closer to it, feeling the exact same way I would pre plant medicine ceremony, even leading up to my divorce. In hindsight, being like, man, I am uncomfortable in my body and I do not know why. And so, to men listening to this specifically, there are evolutionary changes that we go through that need to be marked with some kind of ceremony or some kind of at least intentionality that we just blow right through. We celebrate birthdays with a party, but were you, and I'll ask you for just for the sake of men listening, before the birth of each one of your sons, did the men around you take you somewhere intentionally and say, hey, let's speak our fears, your fears of fatherhood into the fire and burn them? And let's each man here honor you in a way that they see you being an amazing father. And did they put their hands on you and say, there will be tough times, there will be long nights. We all want you to know that you are surrounded by brotherhood. You are not alone in this. We are not just saying this to give it lip service. Like we are your team. Now, this is also, was there an older man there to say, this is what fatherhood means? Was there an older man than him to say, this is what fatherhood means? This is the changes that your wife will go through. This is what you'll be expected of as a husband. Or was it like, let's take him out for a couple beers, and or if anything at all,
yeah. Yeah. Where's the cigars, Doug? Like,
right?
yeah,
That's it. It's a cigar.
yeah.
Same thing. I mean, you've talked about it with puberty. Imagine if young men were taken somewhere and there was a group of elder initiated men to say, this is your new role. This is what's required of you. This is what your responsibilities are. These are the gifts that you're going to bring back to society. You're so important to us as a young member. This is what we want from you. This is what we want for you.
Mm,
And by the way, we're here forever. We are your team. We are your lineage. We are your elders. We are your community. We are the men you now are in communion with. Think of the difference,
mm,
right? I got chills telling you that story.
yeah,
I've never experienced it myself.
yeah. The gentleman who started it here, he's probably in his early 60s now. He was a medical physician and
Mm,
he had so many teenagers come through the ER at the hospital who were conducting their own rites of passage and things they were getting physically injured.
hmm
And after reading his book, I realized at 14 I commenced my own rite of passage ceremony. Because when he talks about it in depth, he said, after the ceremony, everybody looks at you differently
Mm,
because of what you went through. Like it's serious. It's not just,
mhm,
oh, we're gonna you're gonna go fishing for the whole day on your own and see if you can feed yourself. There's not, it's full on. At 14, my one of my brothers was renting a large parcel of land, and the only building on it was an old barn. And he was in the paddock there were gold top mushrooms. And
mm,
at 14, you don't have much money. So I had a motorbike, and so I rode half an hour through the bush to his property. And he wasn't, I knew he wouldn't be there. And it'd have been totally cool with it anyway. He was growing weed and stuff, like, and so I go there at 14 on my own. I don't tell any of my
mm,
mates who've got motorbikes, so I didn't take them with me. I go and I commence my ceremony. I go and I pick mushrooms and I take them up to his little gas thing, and I boil some water and I put them in, and
mm,
I put a tea bag in there as well to change the taste. Then I drink it down and nothing happens. Absolutely nothing. And I'm like, oh, these things are stupid. So the following Saturday, I go back and I find some more. And the same thing, no one's home, he's not
mm,
there.
mm,
And when I open the stems up, this time instead of being light purple, they're so dark purple, they're almost black. And I think, oh,
mm,
maybe they've matured. I do the same thing. This time I get his potato masher and I really squish them out and get the juice out. And I put a tea bag in and I drink it down. And the next 8 hours of my life were the worst 8 hours of my life to
mm,
today. That's the only plant medicine ceremony I've done in my life. I
mm,
was that shit scared of it. I probably would microdose if it's legal here in Australia to microdose if you have a prescription from psychiatrist. That's
mm,
it for the last 2 years. But I would be going to microdose. But I literally realize now I was trying to show myself I am going into doing something that is full on and I'm going to be a different person when I came out. But during the
mm,
whole process, all I could imagine is I'm going to be in a straitjacket, locked in a padded room for the rest of my life. I felt so crazy. That's what
mm,
this doctor was saying. Because of things like that, guys, doing
mm,
whatever,
mm.
jumping off high cliffs into the, ocean, and
Right.
just we've got the testosterone, we want to do it. We want to be recognized that we are
Mm,
different, we are better. I am not that little 12-year-old boy anymore. I'm a fucking man now. I've got
right.
hair like an inch long under my arm.
Mm,
Like, and we've got no idea if, and like you say, if we were guided through it and
mm,
put through something difficult, but
mhm.
you know, in a way, yeah. Yeah, it's a very, very valuable thing that we don't do, and we skip
And
right.
let's talk about a midlife crisis. Is that not also the same thing? It is someone flopping around in an uncontained transformational experience of I'm not guided, there's not a container, I'm not helped, I don't know where I'm going. I just know things feel different than they did yesterday, and I'm uncomfortable. So I'll buy a Porsche and knock up my assistant. And that's, excuse me, it makes sense if all of that energy, this transformational energy, has nowhere to go. We just put it somewhere, and it often causes harm.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. Just want to go back to going back to when you were in the dark and you said you were laying on the floor, you were laughing, and you were bringing these files out because you didn't have your laptop there to type out this new book but it was all in your mind, and well, wherever it was, you could
Mhm.
tap back into it the next day, write another couple of pages, another couple of chapters, whatever. Do you still have that ability now you're out of the dark? Gone.
No, I still write, but now I'm typing.
Right. Yeah. So you,
And maybe I would if, I don't know. Maybe it's just been replaced by typing. That I still get the same joy, I still get the same satisfaction, just the physical experience is different. I think it's coming from the same source, right? Only this time my eyes are open and I'm staring at a screen. But I haven't actually, I mean, I want to be honest with your question. I haven't tried. I've written an immense amount since coming out, but none in that capacity, or none in that fashion.
Hmm. No, I'm just curious because then I guess you could, with technology, you've got the option to voice record to
Hmm.
text. Whether you could lay there with your eyes closed and with a big grin on your face and just speak it, and it's sitting there
Yeah.
typing away. I'm curious, like the abilities that because I'm assuming you didn't have that ability before you went into the dark, and it was
Mm-mm.
something that appeared.
Yeah.
And
I
yeah,
remembered it from the first time, but this time it was far more creative. And that was a 10-year. I've written two books since that first experience. So as a writer, I've grown immensely. And so now, back then, I was a new writer. I'd only been writing for about a year, and now it's much longer. But it was such a pleasurable experience, Doug. I would literally be laughing and delighting in the stories, like living the story, going back to the beginning, reliving the chapter. And these are some of them were fiction, some of it was factual stuff that I wanted to share when I came out. Most of them I have written, taken from my brain to paper now, and they live. But yeah, it was a really wonderful experience.
because that's really cool. Because like when I'm researching people like yourself or others for to come on the podcast, I'm driving in the car listening to ebooks or podcasts or whatever, and I often have to like find somewhere to pull over quickly
Mm-hmm.
and stop the podcast, tap notes, and quickly voice record text on my phone, or like for an awesome question that I've just come up with.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Whereas it would be just so awesome to be able to tap that in, and I know it's there. You could do it,
Mm-hmm.
obviously, because you've
Mm-hmm.
done it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but we'd lose it. It's gone. And you just go, it's gone. Where did it
Mm-hmm.
go? And it's like, how do I get that question back? And that's why I desperately pull over somewhere
Mm-hmm.
and get it down and like just stop myself having thoughts to get it onto the phone or onto a written pad or something as quickly as I can before it goes away. Because otherwise it's
Yeah.
going to go away in like 60 seconds. It's gone. And I've had
Mm-hmm.
some profound things, um, as we all do. But
Mm-hmm.
um, but yeah, the ability, that's why I'm curious, were you at the next day, like able to just tap back in and bring that folder back out in your mind? Um,
I was able to when I was writing, but only with the stories that I wrote there, but not new creative stuff.
right. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. And I'm sure there's probably people around who teach us to do that, who've been able to do that and then could teach.
For
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. I was curious if you'd
Mhm.
decided this is a cool thing to continue on. And even if you did try, were you still able to do it? Or
Mhm.
has it, like you said, for the first day or two, and like you're saying now, you mask yourself for half an hour a day to
Mhm.
meditate, like to get into that. Does it seem as dark?
No.
No.
And I'll tell you something that's unique. On the last morning, when the door is opened and sunlight starts to come in, I could close my eyes just as you can now, and it would go dark. And then on like a two count, like one 1000, two 1000, a whole nother depth of darkness would come across. It was as if I was in a room when someone closed the curtains and then someone blacked out the room entirely. And I think what I've gotten back to is the when I close my eyes, it's dark, but it's not, there was a depth from being in there for so long that there's just a deeper sense of the deeper experience of darkness when I was in there.
Hmm. Interesting. It just reminded me, probably 30 minutes before we came on this call, I was sitting here and I had a few minutes to spare. So I've got this piece of technology called a neurovisor. And
Mm,
it's got a little headband you put around, and then maybe 6 inches off your face, it's got like a little screen there with like probably a dozen LED lights on it, connected to an app on your phone. Pop the headphones on, so you've got the music, and it's it's quite high tech. They've done a lot of stuff with neurologists and things like that, and so you keep your eyes closed when it goes on, and the LEDs just flash away, however they in whatever patterns they do, and
Mm.
they're only white LEDs, but you see a kaleidoscope of colors and patterns, and it's getting into your brain waves, into the neural pathways, and doing its thing. I'm curious if you'd been in there a week or two and then could work out how to get one of those on and suddenly have and this yeah, obviously you would have it at a low intensity, not how that would suddenly affect the brain waves like after being in the dark for a week sort of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I've had some phenomenal experiences with that. That's as new tech that's been out probably 18 months. But back
Mm.
in 2012, there was two guys in Austria. One had had a near-death experience as a child, become a neurologist, and the other, I think the other guy was as well a neurologist as well. And so that all their studies of the brain, they created this very powerful light with all, like hundreds of LEDs in it, and it cost like $20,000.
Mm.
And my son had one, and he had a business for a while with people would come in and lay under it. And so the good thing was, while he was fitting out his shop for about 3 months, we had it at our house. So I
Mm.
was the guinea
Guinea
pig.
pig. Yeah.
Yeah, quite voluntarily, I can tell you.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
would jump under it once or twice a day for sort of 30 to 60 minutes. And I tried all the different musics, to see which enhanced, some didn't. I had a bottle of beer once before it, and we worked out very quickly that just took it away. It was
Mm.
like a very, very ordinary experience with just one beer.
Mm.
I took some THC a couple of times. Um, One time I took too much of it for
Mm.
that experience, and it felt like I'd had 10,000 lifetimes in 40 minutes.
Whoa.
I was so exhausted. It wasn't funny. Another time I got my podcast microphone and I held it on my chest to try and narrate what was going on. Because actually that one time when it went crazy, I would be every half a second I'd be somewhere different. I'd be at the beach,
Mm.
I'd be sitting on my lounge, I'd be inside another planet,
Wow.
I was just going everywhere. And
Wow.
like they say the veil's thinning. So when this
Hmm.
thing's
Hmm.
going with the kaleidoscope, it's like I'm holding my hands up for those who are listening without, not on YouTube, like, and I've got a mesh of my fingers and you can sort of see through stuff. Well, with the THC added, it's like it got a lot more open and I could see a lot more.
Mhm.
And it wasn't just these wonderful colors and visions and you sort of see things. That's how it normally is. But yeah, when you start playing around with the brainwaves, it's
It's wild.
yeah, it can take, yeah, and it's like you go, "Well, where were you?" I go, I wasn't here. I can tell you I
Yeah.
was not here for 40 minutes. I was gone. They go, where were you? Oh, there's no answer to that question that I can give. So, yeah, yeah. And that probably after you've been a week in the dark, it'd probably be too intense. You'd
Yeah.
have to, yeah, yeah. The brain would be, what are you doing to me? Yeah. So for men
Mhm.
to develop their intuition. Like you felt the advantages of having it. And I'm sure you've realized there's been times in your life when you weren't so in tune with it and it wasn't so advantageous. Um, what's a simple way? If there's a man out there who's listening and they're like, I've heard this intuition stuff, it's for women, but I'm listening to you two and I'm willing to sort of entertain the idea. Do you have anything that would be a quick, simple way for guys to start to experience it for themselves on their own quietly when there's no one around looking and no one knows that they're trying to tap into something? Like what are they already experiencing and that they don't
Mhm.
recognize as their intuition?
First, I just have to say the idea that it's just for women is a load of bullshit.
Mm.
So get over that. That's nonsense. This isn't the 1950s anymore. You have the same skill and power. The difference is you haven't walked your entire life as prey, most likely, and women have. So it's a bit more heightened with women. Now, You take a really good hunter, and what does he also have? You take a really good fisherman, a good spear fisherman, a good surfer, a good skydiver, a good athlete, a good soldier. They have a ton of intuition. Most guys aren't going to like this answer. It requires space, it requires quiet. I don't think your intuition speaks to you in loud shouts unless you're in real danger. Then sometimes people will say, like, God, I pulled up to the stop sign and I heard, wait here for another half second. And the truck blows through the stop sign going the other way. So most men have, if you actually are honest with yourself and can look back on times where you did get some kind of guidance, where you walked into a room and you knew something was off. You saw someone and they just didn't feel like they were the right person. And then later you learned like, oh, that was someone who'd done something horrible. You have this information at your fingertips. But here's the deal, fellas. It doesn't live in your head. It lives in your gut. What do we say? I imagine it's the same saying where you are. Trust your gut. How many of us grew up hearing, trust your head? That's what we do, but I've never been told that. So it's really about recreating and strengthening the relationship you have with a part of yourself that speaks in whispers most often. It speaks in silence, it speaks in feelings. And I'm not talking emotions. Like I can get tiny little stomach contractions. Like, oh, my stomach just tightened a little bit. I know then to pay attention. Something's going on that I don't like. Right? Oh, I'm relaxing a bit more in this situation. It's my intuition saying everything's great, everything's fine. Look for patterns that you don't need to discern with your eyes. Like, something about that person is different. Something about that train that just pulled up feels uneasy. Just start listening and believing that there's information. I mean, think about it. How many things is our conscious mind not taking into account right now on this conversation? If I had to track everything that was happening in my room, in my body, in the atmosphere, I wouldn't be able to talk to you.
Mm.
I'd be so overwhelmed by all of the input. So my mind finds the input that's necessary to navigate my day-to-day life. But that doesn't mean that the other input's not there. Anybody who's played with AI now knows that there's informational forces, let's call them, that holy shit are kind of maybe they've been there the whole time. We just haven't been able to find them. The internet, right? We are connected in ways that are invisible. We can say, oh, that's just technology. Well, technology tends to mimic what's already there in the natural world. So, to guys listening, slow down to the point where you can actually feel something. Spend some specific time in quiet. Ask yourself a question with a pen in your hand, and then without analyzing or judging your answer, write it out. These are things to get us out of the analytical engineering type mind and back into the felt sense of the body. Start to pay attention to your body. That means you have to have a clean relationship with it. You're not feeding it shit. You're not numbing it. You're not feeding it crap food. You're not beating the crap out of it so that you don't feel. You actually have to have a relationship with your body that is a positive one, not an abusive one. Why would someone in an abusive relationship whisper wisdom to you? So guys, that's where I'd start. And really get over the stuff about women. That's dumb. And actually find times in your life where you do have evidence that it has been there. I'll tell you, when I was 17, I came home from high school. I walked to my front door in Connecticut. I was about to put my key in the door. I lived with my parents, and I got a terrible feeling. And I was like, something's off here. And I went, I don't know what it is. I looked around, everything was fine. Opened the door, went in. The answering machine was beeping. This is, I'll date myself. I hit, play on the answering machine, and it was my mom saying, your father's been injured. He's in the hospital. Please come down to the emergency room. Now, what told me when I went to put my key in the door that that was a real situation. I'm 17, right? I'm not a spiritual practitioner. I don't have a meditation practice. I'm a dumb kid from the East Coast. Yet there was something in the air, let's call it, or something that let me know that there was something amiss. And so that's one of the earliest times I can go back and go, yeah, I knew. I knew. I remember I remember being nervous about going into the house that day. So I bet you if we sat down with every single one of your audience members and said, tell me one time that this happened. Now, here's the challenge, Doug. There's 50 times when it didn't. And that's where we go, well, that was the time too that like I saw the train and I didn't want to get on it and it didn't explode. Like, well, okay, great. Or maybe something else would have happened when you got on it. But just start to believe that there is information and following it is a great way to live.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been asking pretty much all the questions here.
Mm,
Before we wind up, is there anything that we haven't talked about that you'd like to mention? And also, I'll have in the show notes how people can contact you, what, links to your books and podcasts and things like that.
beautiful.
So yeah, if you could maybe quickly tell us, some things where you really would like people to contact you and any final thing you'd like to bring up that we haven't already talked about.
Best place to reach me is on Instagram at Traver Boehm, TraverBoehm. And if you haven't read the book Man Uncivilized, get a hold of it. If you haven't read 28 Days in Darkness, it's a whole different book, but get a hold of it. Both are available on audio if shipping is an issue. And I'll try to make this quick, Doug. The big thing that I came out of the dark with was a framework. And I named it, or it was given me the name Olslai. I don't know if you've heard of this yet. Olslai.
Sorry, how
And
do
what
you spell
it's
that again? Sorry.
Olslai.
Yep.
And it stands for One Life, Soul Led, All In. And that was, I heard that early on and I didn't know what it meant. Olslai, Olslai, Olslai. I started hearing this. You said the veil is thin, right? The woman guiding me was like, the veil in this room in the dark in this country is very thin. Things will come through. And I didn't know what it meant. And then I heard those words: one life, not three lives, not a public life, not a private life, not a secret life, one unified, aligned life that comes from a soulful place. And you got to go all fucking in on it. And I heard those words and I dropped to my knees and I started crying. And I realized that is why I'm in here right now, to be initiated into this framework and to teach this framework, not just to men, but also to women, and add it into the framework of ways that I do teach. I teach uncivilized. That is my core methodology for men. But once men have done 2 or 3 years of that work and they want to go deeper, where do they go? They come up to this area. And so just I want to leave that with your audience too as an idea of how many of you feel like you're living fractured lives. You're living lives that aren't in alignment with depth and the depth of your being, or you're fucking half in, half out because you're afraid of what would happen if you went all in. And so I'll leave you all with that. That's what I'm going to be speaking and teaching on in addition to men's work for the next 10 years.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you for your time today. It's
Thank you.
been greatly appreciated. It's been very valuable to me. I get to become who I hang around with. I've always taught my four boys that. Be
Yeah.
careful who you hang around with. And I know for the men listening, a wheelbarrow load of gold nuggets there for them they could
Thank
pick
you.
any one of them, could listen to this 45 times and get something different every time. Thank you so
Thank you,
much,
brother.
Traver.
My
Thank you.
pleasure. Cheers.
Well, we're at the end of another thought provoking episode. Remember to subscribe so you'll be alerted to new episodes. I want to say thank you to the men who are joining me on this journey of intuitive development. I truly hope our time together has expanded your reality and reinforced trust in your ever reliable gut feeling. Embrace your intuition, it will not lead you astray. Until next time, stay tuned, stay curious, and trust your gut.